Welcome, everyone. For session number 3, we have Lyra Silverstein. Hey, Lyra.
Hi.
She's going to be discussing herbs to nourish your whole self, supporting your physical, emotional, and spiritual well being. Lyra grew up in Rockland County, New York, and has spent time in Vermont and New Jersey before returning to her roots. In 2018, Lyra founded Spiral Moon Herbcraft, driven by her passion for creating magical herbal products for self care and wellness. Her dedication to herbalism has led to a fulfilling path in serving the community, and her products are available both online and in select botanical and metaphysical shops. You can find out more about her at spiralmoonherbcraft.com, which we will have in the comments below. So, hey, Lyra.
Hey. I'm very excited to be here today talking to you. Um, Herbs are my passion, and I am eager to dive in and talk about them a little bit with you all and just show a couple examples of a few different herbal categories that I think will be very helpful and supportive for us, for our bodies, for our minds, and our spirits. And hopefully you come away with this learning a little something on how to incorporate these herbs into your daily life.
And
So
yeah, go. I was going to say, if you're ready, jump
yeah,
right on in. I'm excited. I don't know a ton about herbs, but you've helped to guide me towards using them in my own life, and it's been really important. So I'm hoping other people will have the same experience.
well, that's wonderful. And all it takes really is just, giving it a try, even starting with one plant just to get familiar with it. Um, but before we jump into the herbal part of it, I wanted to talk a little bit about the four pillars of health, which are exercise, nutrition, sleep, and relaxation. Um, and one of the reasons why I wanted to talk about those four things are because a lot of times we tend to separate herbs from like these basic foundational vital essences, vital parts of our being that they're kind of like, I think of us like our body is like our home, and we need a strong foundation for that home. So those are the four pillars that hold the foundation of our being. And if we just lean on something like an herb to, help us, I mean, that's okay. But if we're not taking care of, like, if we're not getting enough exercise or enough rest or, supporting our bodies nutritionally, there's only so much that those herbs can really do. But if we do take care of ourselves with those four pillars in conjunction with the herbs, then that's where things can really work very well. And since this is talking about loving ourselves, embracing ourselves as we currently are, it's okay to have a little grace with yourself. Don't beat yourself up if you're not getting enough exercise. You don't have to join the gym. You know, you can get outside and go for a walk. I mean, let's be realistic and let's be gentle with ourselves, is what I'm saying. And at the same time, just trying to be present and try to listen to your body when it's talking to you. And that takes practice, of course. I know that you have experience with that, Sarah, and I think it's a really wonderful skill um, that people, you tend to learn. I mean, there's times when you just can't ignore it if your body's talking to you. It's like, hello. So, so yeah, um, that's one of the reasons I love herbs, is that they do support the vital forces of the body. And so when we honor the four pillars of health, we're honoring our body, and the herbs can have a greater impact. So I wanted to talk about three different categories of herbs, and each category, they kind of weave together depending on the plants, because plants can have more than one um, organ system or function that they work on in the body. So I guess why don't we start with adaptogens? So I wanted to talk about adaptogens because I think that they're one of those herbal categories that um, they're very popular because everybody wants to feel energized and they kind of look to adaptogens to give them energy. It's not quite the same thing as caffeine, though. So this category of herbs are really helpful for our body's response to stressors. Um, so oftentimes they're used to support the endocrine system, which is like our glands, like our thyroid gland, our pituitary gland, our adrenal glands. When we're feeling burnt out and depleted, these herbs really help to nourish those systems. But a lot of times people just lean on those just for energy, like as an extra source of energy, but they really shine more for when we're feeling depleted and just like burnt out, exhausted, and stressed. If you haven't got enough sleep, then maybe you need to look for another category such as nervines, which I will also talk about later. But because sleep is very important and you don't want to just lean on adaptogens or caffeine for that matter to just keep going and going and going, because then you'll be burning the candle at both ends, and that's not going to really in the long run be very helpful for your health.
That makes
So
sense.
so I wanted to give an example of one of my favorite personal favorites, which would be holy basil, or
Mm.
it's also called tulsi. The Latin name is Ocimum sanctum, and it's one of those herbs that's really popular in Ayurveda, which is a system developed in the Indian subcontinent. It's a very ancient system. It's one of the areas that the plant is native to, but it does grow very well here in the Northeast. So, like, we've grown it before here in our herb box, and it just smells and tastes really wonderful. It's actually um, related to common basil, Ocimum basilicum, I think it is. Um, yeah, so they're both in the mint family. They have a delicious taste. I love them as a tea. In fact, my heart to heart tea has holy basil in it because it just tastes so good. And that's why I
It's
love
one
it.
of my favorite tea blends. I have to say, I drink the heart to heart a lot just because it feels like a warm hug.
Yes, in fact, I'm drinking some right now. But this is one way that you can incorporate an herb like that, like an adaptogen, in your daily life. You just make some tea with it.
Can you
Um,
give some other examples of adaptogens?
oh, sure, I could. So another one that a lot of people love is ashwagandha. So ashwagandha is an herb that is very nourishing to the nervous system. It supports those burnt out adrenals if you're feeling really depleted and fatigued. And I love it also for like if you're having insomnia issues and like um, difficulty with feeling fully rested. So that's the interesting thing about adaptogens is a lot of people think of them for energy, but then they're also really helpful for these situations where our nervous systems are completely frazzled and stressed out, burnt out, because we're not getting enough rest. So they rebuild the nervous system in that sense. So when you do sleep, you feel more rested. So a lot of times you would incorporate that. Some people like to drink like a beverage, like almost like a hot chocolate at night with some, powdered ashwagandha sprinkled in. That's one way with that you could incorporate that, or you could take it as a tincture as well. Um, there's also reishi mushroom, which is just an amazing. I mean, there's so much you could say about reishi mushroom. But since I have a bunch of others herbs, I figured we would continue
Yeah.
with that. But those are just a few examples. I just the one of the main reasons I brought up holy basil is because it tastes really good, and for people who liked tea, it's really wonderful that way. But you could also take it as a tincture. You could take reishi mushroom as a tincture, or cook it in a broth, to get
Mm.
to extract all the constituents. And it's just very beneficial. There's been a lot of studies on the benefits of medicinal mushrooms, but that's a
Mm.
whole entire topic.
I hear
So,
you. That's fine.
all right. Yeah, so I love adaptogens for that reason. I love to end the day with a nice cup of tea. Even during the day is okay. It's not so I wanted to just clarify one thing about adaptogens is they help your body's response to stress, but they're not necessarily like a sedative, like
Mm.
as in like a nervine sedative where it makes you feel tired, like you want to go to sleep. It's not so much like that. It's more of just supporting the nervous system, and so that you feel more like you can respond better to stressful situations, or um, just so that your body's response is more calm.
That makes sense.
Okay, good. And then I wanted to talk about bitters because that's actually one of the most important as far as tastes go. Um, Bitters, it's an action, but it's also a taste, right? So immediately when we taste something bigger, it triggers a whole cascade of responses inside our body's
Mm.
physiology. It helps with bodily secretions. So it kickstarts the whole digestive process, which helps us to better digest fats. It helps our metabolism a little, to reduce the amount of accumulated wastes in our bodies. So one of my favorites is dandelion, and I've actually been making this tincture, which I
Mm.
started in September, so I'm sure it's plenty ready to go. But I just wanted to show you how cool is
Ooh.
that.
So it's dandelion and what?
It's just dandelion root. So a tincture is when you take the plant and you basically pour some alcohol over it and infuse it in that alcohol for, I would say, at least 6 weeks would be good. It really depends on the herb. When it's a root like this is the root part of the dandelion. Um, I like to use slightly higher proof, so, and this is 100 proof. You could do it with even higher than that. Like you could use Everclear. But one of the reasons you want a higher proof is to really extract those constituents that are beneficial. You can see this has kind of a milky look to the bottom.
Mm. Oh, yeah.
And what that is, it's prebiotic inulin. So prebiotics are one of the beneficial constituents of dandelion. That fiber helps feed the good bacteria in your gut. So
I
it
take that
supports
every day.
it supports your gut flora, which, as we all know, that's really important. It's even more important when it's out of balance. So it's your friend, really. Um, and I love dandelion also because you can use the entire plant. It's the whole thing is medicinal, from the flower all the way to the roots, the leaves, the
Amazing.
stalk, all of it. It's such a beautiful plant. And I also have the flower essence here from, so my mentor, Lata Kennedy from Flower Power Herbs and Roots, she has that store in New York City and in Piermont, New York. She created this flower essence, and I love it. And I can talk a little bit about flower essences too. Um, that's a whole system that was developed by Dr. Edward Bach in the 1930s. And the way that flower essences work is you take the blossoms at their peak when they're most vibrant and beautiful. And you infuse them in spring water, and then it gets preserved with brandy. So
Mhm.
it captures the energetic vibrations of that plant when it's in its peak. And then each plant has a different energy or vibration to it. And so this doctor, he developed a whole system so that each flower, each plant has these specific properties that work on different soul issues, and different patterns that tend to be more on the emotional side of things. It's a little more subtle, and the way you would take it is more like homeopathic, like a couple drops, and you take it regularly. But you notice that there's a shift after taking it for a certain amount of time. It's more of a subtle thing than for example, the tincture. The tincture, you're going to taste that bitter taste when you take it, and you're going to take more than a couple drops unless you want to do it on a low dose side of things, which it depends on the situation and the person. But I just wanted to show you that there's
Yeah.
a couple different ways of working with these plants. And with dandelion, the whole plant is edible. You can eat the leaves in a salad, and those are very high in minerals. And the whole plant is an alterative as well, which means that it works on the elimination pathways. So the kidneys, the liver, it helps the body eliminate those metabolic wastes in the lymphatic system, and it's really excellent. And it's one of my favorite things because I don't have a gallbladder. I had
Mhm.
my gallbladder removed, I think it was, well, just under 10 years ago. Well, it'll be 10 years ago by the time this video comes out. But yeah, so because of that, my liver needs a little extra support. So I love my bitters because of that.
And I actually, you convinced me to use bitters on a regular basis now too, also for liver support and general digestion support. And I will say, I definitely can tell when I'm not good about taking them. I can feel the difference. So
Oh,
I
yeah.
try to just make sure I take them now. But that was probably one of the very first things that I feel like you introduced me to that I 100% can tell the difference. And then from there, once I became more body aware, it was easier to feel the difference in some of the other herbs that I worked with after that.
That's great. And that's really the best way to tell is, start out by taking something and um, noticing how it tastes, because the taste is really one of the most important aspects of working with herbs, um, depending on the application, of course. If you're not taking it orally, like internally, if you're using it topically, then of course that's not applicable. But if you're working with a remedy like a tea or a tincture, or even in foods, because what you eat has taste, and that can also be affect your body's responses. For example, if you eat something spicy, you might start sweating.
Right.
It's going to help increase your circulation. Um, so I think of things like that when I think of energetics, which is another important aspect of herbs. Because when you're working with somebody, let's say, for example, you're working with somebody and they tend to go hot, like they tend to run hot. You don't want to give them herbs that are warming like that, like cayenne
Mm.
pepper or ginger or garlic. They're gonna hate you. No, I'm just kidding. They're just not gonna feel very comfortable. So you would want to give them something more cooling to help them relax. And maybe with that, I can shift into the next herb, which would be, sorry, I just did dandelion,
It's okay.
lavender.
Mm.
So I wanted to talk about lavender because it's one of my favorites for its nervine properties. So a nervine means it's relaxing. It works on your nervous system to help relax things. And with lavender, because it's also in the mint family. Um, it's a little bit bitter. It's more of like an aromatic bitter. Of course, we think of the aroma, right? We smell the lavender, and it's got an amazing scent. And you can also drink it as a tea. It is a little bit on the bitter side though. So when I add it to my tea blends, I put a very small amount compared to the other ingredients. But one of the things that I love about it is just its ability to calm you and relax you, especially if you're in a state of where your nervous system is just like activated. So you have in the nervous system, you have the sympathetic and the parasympathetic branches of the nervous system. With the sympathetic, it's like the fight or flight response.
Mm,
That's when your nervous system is like triggered and you're just like feeling super anxious and like panicked. For example, like if you're having an anxiety attack or a panic attack, or you don't feel safe, you feel like you're in danger, or you're just completely stressed out, your nervous system is like in that state. What we want is to shift it to the parasympathetic state, which is what they call the rest and digest state.
mm,
And that just means that your nervous system is relaxed enough so that you can feel like you can digest your food, you can feel calm. And that's really the state that we want to be in as much as possible, except for when it's necessary to be, you know, for our survival instincts and such, maybe then the sympathetic response is more appropriate. Um, but yeah, so in order to get into that parasympathetic state, nervines are really wonderful for that. So I love lavender for that. I also love it as an aromatherapy
mm,
aid because not only with the taste of the bitter aromatics working on our nervous system internally in that way, we can also use it externally through scent. The scent itself is very relaxing, so I like to include it in some of my um, anointing oil blends. So one example would be Luna, which is this one. So this is Luna. She has lavender buds and amethyst in there. The scent is lavender, bergamot, and patchouli. And so it's really nice for moments when you're feeling just like you really just need a calm energy around you. Um, this can be helpful even when traveling. Some people get really anxious when they're traveling, whether it's through like if they're going on an airplane or even just public transportation. Whatever the case may be, they just might feel anxious about the whole process. So sometimes having something like this, or if you're having, trouble settling down for sleep and you just need a little bit of scent therapy, aromatherapy, help feel calm. This is one of my favorites for that reason. Um, yeah. So
wow, that was a lot of information. I love it. Um, no,
yeah,
it's okay. This is a huge topic, and I was wondering for the plants that you mentioned, so the dandelion, the lavender, and the bitters,
dandelion, lavender, and holy basil.
and holy basil. Thank you. For those three, I was wondering, you talked about obviously a lot about the physical states, a little bit about the mental state, and I was curious about some of the spiritual aspects, and maybe a deeper look at the energetic of those three.
Absolutely. Um, so we can start with the holy basil. And since I have it in this tea, I will talk about it spiritually in that sense. Um, when I crafted this blend, I always get into a like sort of state of spiritual awareness. I don't even know how to call it, but whenever I'm creating like an herbal, whether it's an herbal tea blend or an oil blend, um, I always want to be in a particular state of mind. I don't want to feel angry or mad or anything like that when I'm making something because I want the energetics of my intentions to infuse into what I'm making. So I always try to make something with love and just that energy adding into it. So the heart to heart is really my way of trying to give you a tool spiritually, that, I mean, obviously it's got its physical properties that are beneficial, but for spirituality, um really bringing you inward into your heart space is what the intention is with that one.
Mm.
Because I mean, the herbs really do help support cardio tonic wellness. They are nervines, they are just nutritive and comforting, and it just feels like a hug when I drink it. So that's what I love about it. And I think that it could be incorporated into spiritual practices, such as when you're trying to get yourself into that space of coming home to yourself, bringing yourself inward so that you can just like send yourself some love. And when you get yourself into that heart space, it just it just makes everything so much easier because
Mm.
nothing else matters. You know, everything else kind of falls away, and you just sit in that, in your home with your four pillars of
I
health.
love that.
um, you come home to your body, and when you're paying attention to your body, you start to notice things, you start to pay more attention and listen to the signs that it's communicating to you. And then once you're more aware of those things, then it kind of opens up, it kind of makes you bloom, and you start to pick up on other things. So
I
yeah.
love that your whole screen just lightened as you
Did that
opened.
just happen? I was like,
That was
I felt
amazing. I
that.
love it. And I was gonna say that's kind of the way that I drink that tea when I'm just wanting to sit and be in my own space. And it is, I love you said it was like a hug because that is exactly what it feels like.
Yay. And that's one of the reasons why I love it for situations such as grief, when you're having like a really intense emotional experience like that, and you just need to feel centered and grounded. So spiritually, I love holy basil for that. Even if you just had to pick one herb out of this blend to drink as a tea, the holy basil is amazing. But of course, I love all the other ingredients too. So with the flower essence, so because it works more on the soul path, um, in in this case with dandelion, it tends to be used for resilience. So
Mm.
spiritually, I like to think of it as it's like a pick me up. Like when you're feeling like down and like just like you're overextended yourself. It could be physically, it could be emotionally, it could be spiritually. You just overextended yourself and you just need to feel like supported and strengthened. Um, I think of the plant itself. I think of dandelion. Man, that plant can grow through concrete. It
Yeah,
is
through
brilliant.
anything.
It is so powerful. So I like to think of the plant like that when I take the flower essence, and like I'm bringing that energy into my body when I'm taking it. And you
Mm.
can do this with any of the flower essences, by the way, but just if you know, like dandelion, I just happen to think of it that because I'm familiar with that plant. There's a lot of flower essences that exist that I'm not especially familiar with. But one thing I love about working with plants, especially plants that are like growing around me, native to this area, or just local to my bioregion, is I form this relationship with them. Like I get to know them. So
Mm.
I know that dandelion is like that, and that's why I find it so beautiful to work with it in this way. So spiritually, I can think of myself being like a dandelion, just like I can handle things,
I love that actually. Dandelion.
Yeah. And then
Love
with
it.
the lavender, spiritually, I mean, it's just so powerful. Um, I mean, I think of it as being very, very helpful for getting yourself, especially if your focus is like scattered, it helps bring everything in. And maybe that has to do with the fact that it's in the mint family. So it does tend to have this effect as almost like a stimulant in your
Mm.
circulation. It actually does help if you have a headache because of the circulatory stimulant properties.
Hmm.
It tends to work on that upper body head area.
Wow.
So spiritually, I think of it as helping you gain focus and clarity. So I like to work with it in that way spiritually if I'm trying to um, work on something, whether it's a moon phase and I want to do some kind of spell working, or even just with my anointing oils. Yes, I think of them in terms of aromatherapy, but I also think of them spiritually, like as activating um, almost like these archetypes within us. So
Mm.
Luna herself is an archetype in a way. Uh, a lot of these oils that I make are named after various deities. So Luna is very obviously relating to the moon. So there is that lunar quality as well. So it's just another way of working with the plants. You can engage your senses, engage your taste, your smell, go out for a walk and, look at the plants, get to know them, feel them, and just engage your senses. And the spiritual part will just come to you in whatever form it takes. But I have no doubt.
I
Yeah.
I love that. That's beautiful. Do you have any last words of advice for those of us who are stepping into herbs as complete newbies?
So, yeah, I guess my suggestion would be um, see what plants are native to your area,
Mm.
um, to sort of develop a relationship with them. And if that's not possible, let's say you're living in an urban environment where, there's not too many plants growing around you, or, not as much, you don't have as much access. Um, just think about in terms of taste, what kind of taste appeals to you. If you're not really focused on the physiological properties, like, oh, I need something for this or that, to support my liver or like a non-specific. If you're just trying to explore, um I think one of the best plant families to explore first is the mint family, because there's so many plants that fall in that category,
That makes sense.
that you could always explore. Like, oh, I don't like the taste of peppermint. Well, there's also lemon balm, which is also in the mint family, and that has
Oh,
a whole different flavor profile. And it's actually one of my favorite plants to work with, because it's also very relaxing and calming, supports the digestion, and it's uplifting because it's got that lemony sort of flavor to
mm,
it. So mints are probably where I would go to first if I was starting out. But, there's really no
yeah.
rules when it comes to this stuff. I would just say start with one or two plants. Don't like try to learn everything all at once, because you can get overwhelmed
Yeah.
pretty quickly that
There's a
way.
lot.
There's a lot of plants.
And just a lot of information, right, around it. And especially when you're looking at kind of all the facets that plants have, it's just, I do think it can be very overwhelming when you first kind of try and step into that world if it's not something you're familiar with. So
Yes, that is
I,
absolutely true.
well, thank you, Lyra. This has been an amazing conversation. I've enjoyed it very much.
Thank you. I'm so happy that we got to talk about this.
Yes. So thank you, everybody. I look forward to you joining us at our next session. And thanks again, Lyra, for an awesome conversation.
Thank you, Sarah.
Bye.
Bye.